honor thy mother and thy father, because this is right. So it's not becoming biblical. In fact, it's going beyond the Bible and showing how, hey, things get twisted real quick in the Bible. And that's why it gets so confusing. And since, God is not the author of confusion, then he's not the author of that, or it's not the author of that Bible. That's the most important thing to realize. It said, hey, I'm not the author of confusion. Oh shit, you must have not wrote this then. Because there's a lot of confusion. How you just kill up? Never mind. This is too confusing. So what are we talking about then? We're talking about that our parent is in this space now. It's now in the reality because it's in the mind. And then now you know what evil is. Evil is something that will be under your fingernail if you scrape the back part of the toilet in the club.
The following clip is exclusive content from the University. Access over 300 videos and 26 courses with advanced metaphysics on demand. Jump in live chats with Savan and the rest of the tribe. New materials are available monthly, along with guides and regiments. Subscribe today and save $25 off your first month membership. Links are in the descriptions. Subscribe to Secret Energy TV or this channel for future show notifications.
So I had to go all the way down to the most minuscule point and figure out, how did we get disconnected from the source? Once we lose our minds, then what happens? And how do we get back? And what are some of the main things that occur when you kind of lose your mind, right? And so watch this. So this started getting broken down to me in this one scripture. And this scripture was, they wandered after foreign gods, right? This just one scripture. They wandered after foreign gods. And I was taken through this entire process in my consciousness about how we got disconnected from the ancients and how we can reconnect. And it first began to elaborate about, just on the basic level, to a being that comes into a planet, who should really be your God? Who should really be your God? And this wasn't something that I wanted to just readily answer, hey, there's the answer. I wanted it to be factual, not a guesswork. And so the question was then reversed, and the question was, what is a God? And so that one was easy for me, because I was like a creator, because that's what God seems to be so busy doing. I create this, I create that. So then I realized, logically, to a child, their God is their parent. Now listen, this is very simple, but it can cause worlds of disconnect if you don't realize what I'm talking about right now. How this all worked was, so you're coming into the world. So let's imagine a pure, pristine scene. Okay. There's no distraction. There's no mind control. You're coming into the world. You got legacy parents. You can call them that now. They're legacy. You got legacy parents. So you're feeling towards your parents because they created you. They really created you. See, created is a word. It doesn't mean the beginning, though. That's what we went too far with that one. There is no beginning. But the creation process and coming into the physical worlds, there is one of those, though. And they went through that process and then brought you in. So they're technically your gods. Okay? So right away, I was shown that when this scripture is saying you wandered after strange gods, because see how the okay, so the also the actual scripture that I'm talking about is surrounded by this scene where these people who have all this power lose their power because they lose their connection to their God. Now, of course, all of this has been rewritten and changed up in Nicaea so many times. It's like in everybody else's new editions and this editions and the political agendas of the Jesuits and all this kind of stuff. But the seed fundamentals, as they said, you'll find no good story that at least doesn't contain a grain of truth. So in this grain of truth, if you hear what's being said, it's basically just saying when you start looking to something else as being your parents, your creator, beside your real parents, is the moment that things get broken up. Here's why. Because they should be doing that too. Your parents should be looking to their parents as if they're God. And their parents should be looking to their parents as if they were God. You see where I'm going with this here? Because eventually you get to what I'm coming to figure out is called the tree. Okay? Because this tree, it produces good and evil. This is the real tree of life. See, it's like the book is telling the truth, but someone needs to decode it. The real tree of life, the source of the tree is the source of our mother itself and father. It is the high God, if you may. But there is no connection to it when one is not connected to their ancestors. And their ancestors are their parents. So what happens is that when you look at certain cultures, because we're going to fix all this up. When you look at certain cultures, like I believe like in Tibetan Buddhism, they have the unbroken golden chain of Buddhas. Okay. And this is just like a jumper and a catcher system. Like you're going to come, when you leave, we got you. When you come back, we got you. It's an unbroken chain. Everybody born inside of here, initiated inside of here, is connected to this. And it's almost like you can see what they're referring to even when they say an unbroken chain, because as I'm about to show you here in a moment, the expanse of what we're in, remember, it's like light. So the more energy is generated, it just keeps expanding further. So you kind of need this rope, AKA a chain, to kind of like be able to reel back in and navigate the whole space. Okay. So let's zoom back into again, though, is that, okay, so if you're looking up to your parents, oh my goodness, and then, they looked up to their parents and everybody is connected. And so they're exhibiting power. That's the other thing. So you're seeing your parents have power. You're seeing them in the dream. You're seeing them do different things because they're connected. So technically, getting disconnected is when you break that chain. And when you break that chain, the power, like it's like no connection to God. And that's why some people were like, oh, yeah, if you get connected with God, you'll have a lot of power. So watch this. So as I mentioned before, the idea of God is more or less something like this at this state. God is fucking angry. Read the text. So technically, even if God was like the father, like it's supposed to be a father figure to us, so let's say this somehow works, that we don't look up to our physical fathers that created us as God, and then we find a God. We find a eidolon, a thought. Now, all this also came off the king, because these kind of gods, and specifically, Images by Dream Engine this evening, but specifically, these kind of gods, this is actually a depiction of Ahura Mazda. And they always say that, if Xerxes wasn't so cocky and selling his whole fleet to completely obliterate, I guess, whoever he was fighting, and he got trapped up in there into them little walls, and then next thing you know, he lost his whole fleet. Instead of everybody being Christians right now, they would be Zoroastrians, because it's the exact same religion. And Ahura Mazda, he is like a lion god. Okay, he's the ultimate motif of what you're getting inside of the Bible. But this is coming when God is basically a king. Okay, God is not a father anymore. God is a king that is exercising this fear-based practice over the people that if you don't get it right, everybody's going to get hurt. And this is when I was talking about the lose your mind thing. Because you still have cultures to this very day that their way in which and practice to their connection with their ancestors is through that of pain, to that of feeling like the ancestors are mad at them, the God is mad at them, that they need to walk across the whole desert to apologize for this, right? And imagine again the warping of this mind of this being, because they're no longer even connected to their parents anymore, because your true parents would not do that to you. You see what I mean? So it becomes a compiled situation here. This becomes almost like what you're seeing it right now. It's like the godless, but that really means the parentless. So what happens here is that, give me 1 second.
But a lot of people don't.
Because that's where we're at.
I'm sorry. It's always so hilarious to me. I love it. Like I love the icebreaker. Okay, so break the ice. So let's keep going with this. So let's blow this open a little bit. So you see what we're talking about here. Like, so we got a grand conspiracy. Like, it's so crazy. Even when we think about thinking of our parents as gods, we immediately be like, man, you know, my mom's here right now. So not you, mom. I'm talking about dad. You know what I mean? But I'm just saying, like, we're like, when we want to like beef up on some of these chakra books, and, you know, you see how her mother, his chest all poked out, big scepter, the whole nine. And then we're like, well, that's my God? No. We realize that these motifs, they actually come from a time where it's almost like, imagine where you need to show an image to a man that is going to make a man like fearful. Because see, that's who God is in this context. That's who the king is. The king, he rules over the strongest men, right? So that's why I say when kings get weak, like even when presidents get weak, society doesn't even respect them, right? But peep out though how there's another motif though. Here's another motif. And imagine this being the image of a powerful man. You see the difference? It's basically the difference between a very angry, abusive father versus an all-wise elder grandfather. So just peep then in society, you know how society's mind shifts? So when people want a more furious God, and this is what I saw in the Quran. The Quran is designed for somebody who is ripe for extracting vengeance on somebody. Because then it introduces you to a warrior God, and the warrior God's ideals is more along the alignment of someone who is ready to exact retribution. Versus the wise father God, it's almost like it gets to a point in the fiefdoms that is seen as weakness. So then you got to imagine that in the house, if a son didn't see his father as being a part of the military, then in his mind, his father was not God. You see what I mean? So this is mind control. It doesn't need technology to do it. It comes down to the basic fundamentals. That's why I started in with this image, which was that awareness. You know, it's like, larger ancestors teaching children. You see the mothers there, right? But you see like the magnitude of the tree, if you may, the source. And then we also come into this awareness again that we need to constantly maintain our connection to the source. That's why that's why you're here. That's why you listen to spiritual knowledge. That's why you study. That's why you meditate. That's why you do all this stuff, is because you're doing the plumbing on maintaining your connection to the source. And I'm going to explain that because you're also a tree. Now, some are from Atlanta here. I know Pepe said he's from Atlanta, right? So I spent 10 years in Atlanta, something like that, right? And I came in Atlanta when it was fresh. Like I said, I was there with Memphis Bleak and them. You know what I mean? That's Alabama and all them guys is coming through, right? So I wanted to mention that. Okay, so before I mention that, just rewinding here. So what we're talking about right now is we're talking about how to go back to self as a child, because there's no such thing as time, and rework how you're seeing things and feeling about things, especially your parents, in order to reestablish a connection, right? So this even means that you get the word to them. Like this is like a different level of work right now. Like, because you may even have to go to the dream world, get the word to them that their parents are God, and then get the unbroken chain mended up. And the reason why we're doing this is because you need your power. At some point in immortality, you're going to need to power back up. But now I'm going to explain to you why this being that we're in, I'm explaining to you why this being that we're in is conducting this way. Why is our parent doing this? Even the parent that our parents forgot. I mentioned Atlanta because there's a place called Little Five Points. Anybody know of it? So in Little Five Points, there's a store called Sevananda. Anybody know of Sevananda? So in Sevananda, there's this man. He may be still with us. He may not be. There used to be this old man that walked around. And this is a really interesting story, so I'm going to tell it as fast as possible. Before I got back into my right mind, see, because, you know, when I actually went into this high vibration, you know, I call that, you know, it appeared to everybody that I was losing my mind, but I actually was getting awake again. So when I was asleep, I was still in the arena of being awake. You know, it's like you're in these conscious, you know, natural hair, you know, it's more of an urban thing, if you may. So Little Five Points is a place you frequent. You see what I mean? And so there was this one older black gentleman, and one of my friends was like, yo, I mean, okay, so first of all, this dude, it was like when you looked at him, you knew something was going on. That was the only thing. Because when you looked at him, you just like, man, he's dialed into something. But other than that, sometimes when he would be talking and stuff, he'd be crazy. So all my friends was like, man, I sat down and talked to Buddy for a long time. He believes we all came from trees. And I thought to myself at that moment, man, some of these cats is whacked out. I even remembered that, to be all the way to today, now back telling you the ancestor is a tree. And let me explain this. So I had this thing going on when I was a child. It was like, I wanted to believe in God, but seeing the atrocities, I couldn't connect. I didn't get it. I can't understand why God, with all this power, would let the babies die. there was no amount of explaining anybody could do to make that justifiable for me. And so I walked through my childhood into my adulthood with a big chip on my shoulder about God. It would have seemed hubris to most, but it made perfect sense to me. And it's deep because it's like you never really get over that. It's just something that's always there. If God really exists, why isn't he helping us? So I came across this text and it really made a big change in my life. I actually was playing around with Sybil. And I don't even know what it was exactly talking about specifically. It's just when it said one thing, it was like I had one of those moments in time. And it said, in so many words, your awakening will happen when you realize where exactly you're at. And that where you're at is very similar to a tree that nourishes itself from both bitter and sweet things. And it threw me for a moment. It took me a moment. A tree that nourishes itself from both bitter and sweet things. And for me, that was it. Because even just from the bitters level, I had a friend that all his medical practice was just bitters. There's even something called bitters. Like if you live in the UK, you know about bitters. And when you take it and it goes in the body, like if you even think of grapeseed extract and grapefruit seed extract, it's super bitter, but it kills all the candidas. So you could think of the cajole and the ash, right? Like the acids that nurture soil. Those are the bitters. So it's like, for sure, we want the honey. We want the sugar. We want everybody to like us. We want everything to go well. We want. But that's only going to feed only a part of us. At best, half. There's a bitters to what we need to be aware of right now, because we're calling that bitter evil. And let me break that down. So if you look at life and then you understand, okay, so if the tree is responsible for maintaining everlasting life, you see what I'm saying? Because remember, now the myth starts coming together because they talked about this tree in the middle of the garden. And this tree gave had powers with it. You would see good and evil and all this kind of stuff if you ate from the tree, right? But it's all combobulated. It's talking about specifically being connected to the source. Your eyes are open and your connection is on point. And you stay on point and you're in this unbroken chain with you and your ancestors. And you can't enter into that space if you don't realize that the tree is nourishing itself from both bitter and sweet. So that way you understand how to balance your alkalines and your acids. Because you also are a tree. And again, that's the holographic nature to the reality, is like the same thing that the source is what you are, but what you are is actually what your mind has been making you believe that you are through mind control. So it's like we're deep. Now, again, when I say mind control, I'm not telling you mind control is negative or positive. That's another thing. Our parents mind control us. We've been given names. We've been given all the different processes that is necessary for us to come into an ID or an id. So it's almost like a form of hypnosis within itself. And if nobody's aware of what's going on, you even do it to others. And then it becomes a system that everybody is doing it. And that's why it's really like a zombie thing, because it's like nobody really kind of understands they're doing it. Everybody is like disconnected. You're following into patterns, knowing what the results of those things are going to be, but you do them anyway. You know what I mean? It's like looping and then getting all crazy and then fighting with everybody and then coming back together again and feeling sorry for yourself and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, whoa, what's going on? And I'm telling you, all this starts with one, the awareness that who you're really connected to and what you're really connected to, and just starting with your parents and feeling into them and dialing into them in your journey, and then giving them the strength. And that's what we were talking about in the last bill that we had about offering up. That's why you see the children, they're making and preparing things at a certain stage for their parents. That's why they say that when a parent's supposed to get old, the children are supposed to take care of it, right? So that meant that when the tree got old, we were supposed to take care of it. Now, from last time we checked, the tree was even chopped down. So do you see how we have to move through time now? We have to go reestablish things, because then when you see your parents and stuff like that, well, why are they not this and this and this? Because they were disconnected. You definitely can't say that disconnection happened just one generation ago, even two, even three, because this wandering after strange gods seems to have been going on for almost 400 years. And this is all cultures. 400 years of not being aware that your parents are God. And so you see how that's not very hard to argue with, because that's why I said that rebellious son, or the jackal, the rebellious son energetic profile prototype. Remember that's like an anarchist, like an atheist. Imagine an atheist. That means you don't believe in your parents at all. See, do you see what I'm saying here? Like when you get to the foundation of truth, it also lets you see what are the underpinnings. And what happens with the mind and the consciousness is that once something starts telling you what you are and telling you what to believe, and that's called wandering after strange gods, then all of a sudden you forget what you are and who you are. Next thing you know, you're in this cubicle with this one syllable name. You see what I mean? Letting someone else dictate to you what you really are through a feedback loop in society that's hooked to max headrooms. I don't know. Maybe I don't remember max headrooms, but that was weird. I'm just saying there's stuff sitting inside of the mind and in the consciousness that has been embedded there that, I'm having trouble remembering new stuff, but I can recite some of the old Power Rangers song to you verbatim. You see what I mean? How am I going to get that space back? Can I go in there? Go Power Ranger, Mighty Morphin Power. Like, what is that going to do for me right now? But then when it's time to memorize the last chapter of Euclid's theory, I'm like, man, maybe the marijuana, or maybe I'm getting old, or maybe maybe it's not as valuable to you as Black Ranger. I don't know. See, so I'm just saying, so lost. Just ready to be found, baby. Ready to be lit up. Now look at this, because I'm going to keep going. So now remember, this tree, it nourishes itself from both bitter and sweet things. And this is why one must still keep their eye on the tree in that way. It's like, don't get caught slipping in this. Don't get off point, which is in the center. It's the trunk, not the branches. See, the branches, the branches of the military, the branches of the government. So that's all the bureaucracies and the dichotomies and all the stories and all that. The trunk. Okay? So one of the things that you have to make the connection with is that the bitter is evil. So that way, you no longer can let evil take on all of the positions and the guises that it will take, especially on those who do not understand it, because fear clouds judgment even more, and fear clouds it, right? It clouds judgment. It controls the mind. So I need to let you understand where is the fuel for all of this coming from? So now remember, if the whole thing that you're in, like your body, and then that the body is in, is all designed the same, you already know that the body has a huge toxic load. Like I put on one of them the other day, this whole cold plunge and all this kind of stuff, right? So it's called the bath load. And this is like when a human being gets into a certain temperature, they are gonna like come off with at least a half liter to a liter of just toxic salts. You call it sweat. Then there's gases coming off the body, all these burps and farts and belches. Then there's deposits of decay in different parts of the body. It's not all white. And, you know, like oxy, you know, like the lungs are oxified. You know what I mean? It's like everything's white, clean, pink. That's not exactly what's happening. Like even in the teeth, you know, the teeth are just black, just decay and dripping all down into the vagus, all down into the neck, into the throat. You know what I mean? So it's just like the human body, it has a huge toxic load. So if I have to go, and we was even seeing this today, but if I have to go to New York, which has this extensive catacomb underneath it to move all the waste and move a fat burger out and somewhere else, is that really the job that I want to take? But somebody's got that job. What I'm getting at here is that when you go under the microscope, okay, so if a super virus can be in a drop of something that looks like a drop of water, which is a clear, right? Like when they show a lot of viruses, it's just there. You can't see the virus. It just looks like water, but put it on your tongue. So we know on the microscopic level, which is the underworld, right? It's like under the microscope, right? There's the underworld. So the in the underworld or on the microscopic level, there's multiple different kind of things and bacteria. Like, I don't want to disclose all her business, but Jeanette has this thing that she's making, and Bobby has done it too, and a lot of people do it, and it's just like this natural bacteria thing. Like it's a lot of the good bacterias, and then you use some pineapples, like pineapple shells, and then they just start kind of putting anything in there. Like you could use mushrooms, you could use this. So this thing is still in the kitchen, okay? And every now and then I glance at it. I'm kind of afraid of it. I feel like I call it Jeanette's world because it's like basically it's got to be like a whole world going on in there. But remember, it's all sealed. It's just like, do not take off the top. Like when the top's coming out, I run out. I'm not going to be around for that first spore that, you see what I mean? But something is living in this jar and they are multiplying. Right? And there's different ones coming in. There's another thing, different ones come in. It's like, now all this is in this jar. But then like some little small grain of something, what has still been like a little bit alive inside of the under the sheath of a mushroom. And then that will get something that it gets nourished by. And then it starts chain reactioning with something else. And then now we got full blown. You see what I mean? So this is to the extent of life. And like I know that in life, just like humans have a huge bath load, the reality also has one. Now, many people will argue that we're the biggest bath load of society right now. It's like humans are the messiest thing, But we know that that's not how it is. It's just the planet, like it's like when it does something, and this will give you a big clue of how you deal with evil. Like when it has like sulfur, right? Because sulfur is kind of equivalent to the planet's gas. It's so purified in that state that now it's either a fuel, a laxative, a skin softener, you see what I mean? So the toxin gets refined, generally by fire, though. And that's what I start realizing, the whole hell thing. Like when we talked about before, that hell is health, and hell is symbolic to the womb, and it's hot. And it's kind of letting us understand that the tree processes toxin, evil, with fire. Until it purifies them. So this is why in the mythos, it's like always telling you, hey, be a good person. Because at least you'll be on the other side of the tree. But if you're going to be a bad person, remember that the tree is going to come for you. And this is what we need to be aware of. That's the whole thing to this. So it's like this confusion with evil and the reality is to push basically the earth into killing them. Or burning them, because it's going to purify them, because that's what it does, because it feeds on it. And that's, I think, where the whole Saturn thing comes in, because it feeds on bitterness. It's almost like an organism that has learned that as long as it's like it has the whole thing. So it's almost like it could go through the killing process, and then because it knows it has the power to also do the regeneration process. And this is why, like, if you notice how, like, especially in the Egyptian mysteries, they try to assign different roles to everybody that's doing that. And that gets really confusing, because really it could be seen as one being that has the power to kill and to regenerate something. So it's known basically as the Alpha Omega. And that's why the Alpha Omega would definitely be more of like a female god. Because it could kill you, if you may, or process you through hell, or and to bring you back to health. Because technically, if you look at what's really happening, when a person loses their mind, they basically get onboarded by a bunch of viruses and bacteria and bad habits. And then it starts taking them down. And pretty soon, they almost have no control. And so when they finally get, like they say, cradle to the grave or womb to tomb, when they finally get to the tomb, now that's the time where the mother has got to now purify them from all of that shit that's built up on them that they weren't personally dealing with because of all these misconceptions. So what we're saying is to have the power to regenerate and to have the power to remove life, meaning that you have things that need to be, that need check. Meaning they need this universe in many ways that you're in, your universe, right? You, not they universe. So your universe, you're going in here on this and reestablishing that connection. And then you're seeing, so if you want like clues, like, did I disconnect from my parents? You can look in your original reality. And then you can see how you feel about your parents. And that's why I think, again, for me personally, the biggest transition that happened with me and my mother was that I no longer saw her as somebody that I needed to teach. But more of somebody that I need to make sure that was taken care of, because she has my antenna. She's my main source. I send a message to her, or I ping off her, and it goes on up the chain. But if me and her connection is broken, then that disturbs my connection. It doesn't make it as clear. How does that happen? Because in your mind, it's happening in your mind. You're like, no, not my mom. Can't be my mom. Shit. She's a devil. You know what I mean? It's like, and you will get that, because after you go through all these processes, you're going to see that a lot of people, they need to be committed. They need to be purified. Sometimes you get things that are too far gone. It's almost like, when you have to put something to sleep. When you see something is so sick and you're just like, man, it would be best for them to go and take a long rest. So this gets very, very deep. And then, as I said before, the mother, it doesn't mean that all the time, because this is a feedback loop. Everything is. It doesn't mean, again, that when the tree gets old, it doesn't need us to tend to it and also to plant new seeds, because see, our ancestors come back and live through our children, right? But if the child is not in the condition in which the ancestor can even connect with, then the child is over here thinking something else is the supreme being beside you. That's how that plays out. So I want to also highlight one final thing here. It has to do with this image. This is just about the whole thing, because there's not a day that I don't experience something where someone thinks that my sole purpose here in the earth is just to answer all their phone calls and do whatever it is they think I should do with Secret Energy and the rest of the platform. And 9 times out of 10, they have no clue of exactly what it takes to make all of this work, right? But it's just like, sometimes there could be tunnel vision. So I wanted to highlight one thing. So as you see with this image, which is incredible, right? In this image, you notice that there's even people up here, right? And they're standing all up there too. I just want to make sure that it's visible that this picture, which I call it the holiest of holies, is one of my super prompts. I'm going to shrink it here again. Is going to be useful for this story that I want to explain very briefly, just about the paradox, if you may, of being everything. So it's like the restrictions of everything, I call it, the restrictions of everything. So imagine that this is all of humanity that we're talking about, okay? Even though we know that this is not 9 billion. This may be tops, if I did a rough estimate, let's give it like a top in 800 to 1,000 different things being shown, or people being shown on the screen. So nowhere near 9 billion. So let's imagine, though, that we're all collective, though, and we're all in these physical bodies, and we're all in a ceremony like this. My question is that, can the guy all the way on the right side say something to the guy all the way on the left side? Are they talking? And I'm making a point here. Like, is somebody all the way on the right talking about somebody all the way on the left, right? Hey, you over there. Now, I know somebody was like, let's not get metaphysical on this. Well, they all feel each other and all that. Because, yeah, we already know we're all connected. But I'm going to make a point here, because in the physical reality, there's so many of us. When you think of all of us or everything takes up space. It fills in things. It is mass. And because mass creates space, it creates distance, and then distance actually creates what? Lack of clarity. Hey! Generally, you're talking to the person next to you or the person in your proximity. And that's what you also see. Like, generally when there's like when we did a retreat or something like Mindful Fest, what you'll find is there'll be that moment where everybody comes together, but soon everybody breaks off into their own little pods. And it's just because, like, not everybody can sit in a huge, gigantic circle. And, hey! And then everybody's waiting for the next person and all that. It's more hyperdimensional than that. For multiple conversations to get going on, we need everybody to connect to the people that are also around them. And that's how communication really works. So I just wanted to take this moment to remind everyone here that our reality is vast. And we have beings that are completely on this other side of this circle, if you may, that we don't talk to. We don't communicate with. We don't know how they are or what they got going on. We just know that they're a part of this. And this is what you got to understand in being a human being. is that all of these people that you're seeing, they're all a part of this. Now, some of them are clearly tree food. I'm just saying, it's like you can see in the reality that it's way more intelligent than you think. And it's actually setting up quote unquote evil people. But it's going to nourish them in the long term, right? Like, but it's going to, you know what it's going to do. And that's why it's like, that's how spiritual systems started. Because there was just processes. Everybody just became aware of what ultimately is going to happen based on the decisions that you choose to make inside of this experience. So they say, honor thy mother and thy father, because this is right. So it's not becoming biblical. In fact, it's going beyond the Bible and showing how, hey, things get twisted real quick in the Bible. And that's why it gets so confusing. And since, you know, God is not the author of confusion, then he's not the author of that, or it's not the author of that Bible. That's the most important thing to realize. He said, hey, I'm not the author of confusion. Oh, shit, you must have not wrote this then. Because there's a lot of confusion. How you just kill up? Never mind. This is too confusing. So what are we talking about then? We're talking about that our parent is in this space now. It's now in the reality because it's in the mind. And then now you know what evil is. Evil is something that will be under your fingernail if you scrape the back part of the toilet in the club. Just don't put your fingers in your mouth. I'm just saying that there are going to be crevices in the reality that are going to need to be superheated. And until that point, though, they serve generally as fertilizer and fuels. And this is why you don't really want to get into the whole fire god volley thing. Because if you also notice things like that smell stank, like methane, they're all highly explosive. If you notice, when you really understand what evil is, it's something that it explodes the moment you put a light to it. So because our mind, you know, you can see it every day, the mind's trained to start, you know, it just feeds into these fears and feeds into all these misconceptions. And so those things just explode and they burn up all the energy. So they're like in themselves just catalysts. They don't have that much energy. They just have enough to explode and ignite your powder keg. And as I said, where's your powder keg coming from? Well, the design of the creature was it would build up energy from the new moon all the way to the full moon. So the human being builds up this energy. Like I feel it going through my body. I feel it. Like it's not like I think. Like there's something going on with the sun. There's something going on with the earth. And there's something going on with the moon. And we know that it's all like electromagnetic. So if I stand on the earth, if I lay underneath the water, where the water is running underneath the earth, there's different weird things that happen. So I see I'm completely an energetic being, but my disconnect will be if I start adapting other programs or wandering after strange gods, because listen to this. So if I fill my mind with all of this, you know, Disney, right? And, you know, and all these different fantasies and fairy tales, I'm living in that world. And there's nothing about that world that is solid or factual. Like, it's like every road has a dead end. This is why it was so important for us to believe in our parents as our gods, because it's like by default, that's not a dead end. Do you get where I'm coming from? As long as you believe in your parents, you can get to their parents, can get to their parents, can get to their parents, and that's how we get home. It's not like, do you see how every single thing else could just be hypothetical? Here's a surefire way. And again, it starts in the consciousness. And then when you look at yourself, and then if you've given more, I call this the idols. If you give him more energy and intention to something that is less related to the divine feminine and divine masculine in your life, that is again akin to and similar to wandering after something strange, believing in something that does not even look like you, feel like you, think like you, not even in your timeline. And then trying to use that as a way in which to connect to your higher self. So now we can see very clearly, like again, two very basic fundamentals here. Give me one moment. Okay. So I actually coasted through every single part of my notes here, but I did want to make sure that we understand once again that this, so the process, then you can actually see it's chemical. There's things that you can do as experiments to see these energies and forces in real life, right? As much as you would ever be able to realize them. But as I said, their composition generally is that of something that is explosive. So when things, that's why, like when you put something like kind of what's going on in the kitchen in a jar for a long time, and then when you open it up, what do you get? Right? Because there's a force being built up there. And what you got to realize is that force that's being built up, that's what actually makes the minds crazy, because they get so much built up pressure that they lose it. And what you're losing, as I said, every single time, it's going to take time for the body to charge itself back up. Because see, that charging up that I'm talking about, that thermometer, is actually your health. It's like your immunity. It is your immunity. And that's why I said in the beginning, when you can align your mind with your heart, it means that you're looking at your external immunity. Like, okay, how's my connection with the environment? How is my connection with the people that are around me? How is my connection with my tribe? How is my connection with myself? And why am I doing this? Well, I'm going to live forever. So I can live forever hypnotized, completely oblivious to the reality, always in conflict. There's something that wants to smoke at every single moment. That's another thing for us to be aware of, is that this burning energy on distortion, it's a fatal cost now. I don't know how much energy we have. They say that it's known how much money a person will make over the span of their life, and that money is given to them over the duration of their life. And each person has a different number. This is what it said. I look at that as that in life, there's a certain amount of energetic allotment that is yours. If you invest that properly, you'll have more energy. Energy, to me, on the planet, if that could be a currency, would probably be time. Because it's really the only thing that everybody is scrambling for when they come to their senses. So then I look at the investment in time, which is a lot of it is spent thinking. So remember, a big chunk goes to sleeping. I think the third, almost a little bit over a third, goes to sleeping. So there's another big chunk. Like, it's like, even when you're asleep, you don't stop thinking. So you spend so much time thinking. It's almost like, that's why I said we got to connect the mind to the source. So here's what I want to finish with, and we're going to open this up. The next time something happens and it's going down that channel again, you know that channel I'm talking about, that anxiety channel, you need to tell yourself, I nourish myself from both sweet and bitter things. And what this is going to do to you consciously is it's going to make you aware of how to just absorb all of that, not as something that's harming you, but as something that's bringing the experience into balance. Again, not something that's harming you, but something that's bringing the experience into balance. It's something that's making sure that because you're eating all this sugar, that you're able to balance that out. So, and then that way you get more aware of why you would want to move into your own reality and start even doing the balancing yourself. Like, meaning really start looking at your life and seeing how to become the Prius of the energetic center. You see what I mean? Like how to really maintain your energy and actually realize that when you're not using up your energy on something that's not going to really give you the fulfillment that, you know, it's like the bigger stuff. It's almost like, okay, I'm gonna explain this even an easier way. You know, if you have a job, right? And let's say, for instance, you get this check for $2,000 every month and you want this car. You're not going to buy the car on the first month. It's not enough money. You got to save up the money to buy the car. That's exactly what is going on in this reality. People cannot see the other realms and the dimensions and the powers and the connection and things that they have because they don't let their energy charge long enough. They sit there dead in debt because they've been so angry, and everybody keeps doing it to each other. All these expectations. It's like crazy. And everybody want to tell you how to run your life and what you're doing, even though they go do yours. Go do your own then. I mean, shit. Nobody's forcing you to tell me how to run yourself. So I'm just saying in general, this gets us to a point. It gets us to that awareness of where the true power is. The power is within self. Everything else is just an accoutrement. It's just something here to assist you along your path of total awakening and awareness in the self. Why do you need to do this? Because you're immortal. Why do you not even believe that now? Because you're mind controlled. Why have you been mind controlled in order to think of yourself as less than who you truly are? Because it's a feedback loop. You watched your parents become less than what they truly were. And they watched their parents become less than what they truly were. And through a series of events and choices, let's say, you know, I choose to move here. I choose to go to this job. I choose this education. I choose to bring this child. So we're always making these choices, and these choices are the formulas. And that's why I say you got to move into your life at every single moment of choice when the choices are the same ones that are pulling away your energy, the same ones that are clouding your vision, and the same ones that are disturbing your ability of clarity to realize things like that it's obvious that your parents are the gods. And then now you know why we also didn't say all the gods was good. You see what I mean? So you get total clarity. So now we know why evil exists, because the tree needs to eat from it because it's a natural process of what goes on. So it already figured out what to do with it. It figured out that the organism needs to be complete. Also, there was a quick note here. It's like, so why are the parents doing this stuff? So let's say the galactic parents. Why are the galactic parents doing this? Because they understand the importance and the necessity of maintaining balance. You could say they're even obsessed by it. We should be too, but that ability to maintain balance, they know that if someone is going to be bringing in a certain kind of energy, there must be an energy to counterbalance that, because it's something that we're trying to keep balanced. It's like Earth in itself. Like, what happens when the body comes off balance? This is what you can see it as. What happens if the body comes off balance? It gets sick, right? So you got to have the right amount of bitter and you got to have the right amount of sweet. The Earth is the same way. Not everybody is choosing that center column, so it needs to have something to balance out all of these forces.